Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Painless Universal Conversation with myself and Welsh. Today I'll be talking to Marisa. She's an author, she's a warrior, and she's the founder of Lupus Chick. I reached out to Marisa to understand more about the effects that lupus has on especially when you look so normal, but still suffer from incredible pain. I want to understand her journey of pain and how she found joy along the way. For those of you who don't know, lupus is a massive chronic illness that is affecting so many. It's when your immune system affects its own. You don't know it because you don't see it. You can't tell, but some of them do display visible signs of it, while others, it happens all internally. Marisa has been going through this journey, but she's utilized her platform to become successful in raising awareness about the issue. Meet Marisa. Hello everyone, welcome to Painless Universal Conversation with myself and Welsh. I've got the amazing Marisa here with me. As I said briefly in my introduction, she's a warrior. She is going through lupus, and not just that, she hasn't used her chronic illness to stop her in anything she's done. She's also an author. She's the founder of Chick Lupus as well, which is a platform. Would you say it's a platform, or would you say it's a registered charity, your organization?
We are a social community, but we're also a nonprofit based out of New York.
Love that. Yeah, so you heard that. Let's get started, guys, because I think I have so much to discuss and I'm just super excited. She has so much to tell us as well. There's other surprises, which I did put in the introduction, which she'll be telling us about as well. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for joining me. How are you today?
I am wonderful today. How are you?
Wow. And where are you joining us from?
I am in Western New York. I'm right near the Canadian border.
Oh, wow. Oh, good. How is that? What's the weather like? Is that all perfect or?
It's beautiful. This is my favorite time of year. It's in the 60s. It's cool. The leaves are changing, all the apple and pear trees in my backyard are full. It's a good time. It's a good time.
I know. I love autumn when it starts and when the leaves start to change. I love it. It's just I say the leaves become the flower I miss in summer. I look at the leaf for the flowers.
Absolutely.
Was my thing. For those who don't know you, all the way out here in the United Kingdom or around the world who don't know you, can you just tell us a little bit about who are you, Marisa?
So I am the founder of Lupus Chick. I started it about 12 years ago. I'm also a wife. I'm a writer. I sold my memoir about 2 years ago to Broadleaf Books. It'll be out in May 2021. Really just an advocate. I love people. I love helping people. I just want to let people know that they're not alone, no matter what chronic illness they're dealing with. And just want to give everyone hope.
Oh, wow. That's really amazing. I think this is one of the reasons I reached out to you, because you are doing such an amazing job in reaching out, and you do it in such a positive light that you don't let the illness overshadow us, because a lot of times when you look on certain pages, you see a lot of darkness. And when I approached your page, I was so inspired because all I saw was positivity. And you might be suffering. In case for people who don't know, what is your chronic illness and lupus? What is it, and how? And when were you first diagnosed with it?
So I do have systemic lupus. There are several types of lupus. So systemic is, can affect the entire body, anywhere in the body. I was diagnosed in my 20s, but looking back, I had clear symptoms like when I was 8 or 9 years old, but it was just never diagnosed. So, like many autoimmune diseases, there's usually an overlap. So I have some other autoimmune diseases that also give me some issues. But I'd say my biggest struggles are lupus. I do have a brain aneurysm from the lupus, but, I keep an eye on that every couple of months. And, asthma, throw a couple of other ones in there. Every day is an adventure.
What are the challenges? What are the pain that someone going through lupus should expect? And when I mean pain, I'm not just meaning your own emotional pain, but what are the other pains that people go through it emotionally, then relationship pain, economic pain, getting a job? How has that affected you because you have lupus?
So I usually share with people that lupus is like having sort of like cracks in the sidewalk and then a rainstorm, and it just sort of seeps into every little place possible. Um, Emotionally, obviously, being diagnosed with a chronic illness that has no cure is difficult. We don't have many medications for lupus. There's a lot of research now, but there really hasn't been over the last 40 or 50 years many medications made for us. So we use a lot of old medications that are very hard for the body. So dealing with symptoms, dealing with treatment, going into the hospital, getting treatments, that's emotionally taxing. It's physically taxing. And then if you're trying to financially support yourself, take care of a family, have a relationship, have a spouse, you add all of these things on and there's a lot of stress. Financially, they average an annual cost of dealing with lupus at around 50 to 60,000 a year, US dollars. So you have that as well. So you take all of these things into account, and I let people know that every day it's something, like it is on your mind. I always tell people, like, I wish I could get sort of a week off just from the word or just from what it does into different areas in my life. But that's not possible. So I just try to deal with it as best as I can.
I know, because I also have a chronic illness myself. So one of the challenges is also always constantly thinking about it,
Yes.
thinking about balancing. I have kids, I'm a wife as well, and it's always never easy. And I always feel for others who struggle when especially when we're down, because when we're down, we could be really down because it's all everything. It's not just one thing. There's so many other things that comes in together and makes it worse. But you have never let that stop you. You went on to say, okay, I know I suffer from this, but I want to be an advocate for others who are going through a similar situation. And you've started your Lupus Chick for almost 12 years now. What inspired you to say, this is a community based and I want to create for others to raise the profile of the issue?
So I remember when I was diagnosed, um, I don't know if you had read that part of my story, but so I'd had symptoms. And then in my early 20s, I was in college to be a nurse. Again, I love to help people. So I thought that was sort of the plan for my life. And I got hit by a drunk driver while I was crossing a street. So I spent about a year in recovery, and it just completely shifted the path of my life. And it was during that time that all these lupus symptoms came out, which isn't uncommon, for an autoimmune disease. Usually there's a trigger that brings out, these different symptoms. And I just remember the emotional and just mental aspect of that year and how hard it was. I really retreated. I was very upset and angry that my whole life just basically sort of got ripped out from underneath me. And I'm nursing these injuries and I'm going through rehab for the injuries. And then now someone tells me I have this disease that I've never heard of. And so this went on for a couple of years because I wasn't well controlled for the first few years as far as medication and whatnot. And I felt so alone. So I lived in this huge city of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I had only met one other person with lupus. And, the internet was starting, people were just starting blogs. This is going back like 18, 19 years ago. And I remember I searched lupus and there were like 2 pages, and they were this long and there was hardly any information. And I was like, how can I live in a city of millions of people and I don't know anyone else that is dealing with this? Mm-hmm. So Lupus Chick really started as almost like what you and I probably remember as pen pals, like where you would write someone in the mail. But I wanted it to be like an online pen pal. So even if you lived in Europe or Canada, we could connect. I never expected it to become what it is today, because I really went into it looking for other people like me that we could connect with, but I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, and it just grew and grew.
I know it is an amazing community because not only do you talk about the issues of lupus, you actually give advice and write blogs about what you should eat. It's also job how to, if there's any struggles, and you guys really share stories there that are so meaningful. How would you come up with what are the important blogs to blog about?
I think over the years, just with my own personal struggles, and we get letters, we get messages every day, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, and there's a lot of messages that are very similar, like as far as medication, or, how do I know when I should apply for disability, or what do I say to my spouse who thinks I'm just being lazy and I just don't want to get out of bed and I just don't want to get a job, or how do I tell my employer that I have this disease that I might have to take a day off every week to go get my IV treatment? So I was like, okay, these are the pain points that the majority of people are experiencing. These are the things that we need to be talking about. Also, mental health. We get a lot of messages, I'd say especially in the past 2 or 3 years, where people are sharing that they're struggling, but they don't necessarily want to put it out there, but they're looking for advice, they're looking for help. And I don't think a lot of people realize that it's not just them. Like, there are many other people with chronic illness that are dealing with the mental health aspects, and maybe they just don't show it all the time online, but they're struggling. So that's a really big issue for us to tackle as well.
Oh, wow. And now you've built this community base that you're now reaching out, and you have numbers of people who now know you from this. How has it inspired you to go on to not just stop there? You now go on to write a book. What led that decision to say, okay, I know I love I'm helping, I'm doing so much already, and I have this thing. This is so time consuming, but I want to put my story, writing a book, because I wrote my book a couple of years ago. And one of the things I realized from writing my book was it was absolutely so difficult for me to put that information out there, because I just was so cautious. Who is reading this? And what would they think about me? Would they think I'm lazy? Would they think I'm numb? Or would they think I'm stupid? I was just thinking all these things, but eventually I did it, and I put my whole soul out there for everyone who reads it to better understand. And the reason I chose to do this, because I thought lying will not solve the problem. It would just be me trying to paint what isn't true. And now you've also taken on that path as well to write a book, and which will be out next year, right? Your book.
Correct.
Why did you do that? Although I'm very excited you do, because I love when people share their stories. I think the more we do share our stories, the much easier it is to overcome any situation. So why did you do it?
It's funny because I'm a writer. Aside from Lupus Chick, I was a journalist for 13 years, so I love the written word. It's funny because many, many years ago, I felt like, for me, spirituality and faith, that God had told me that there would be a book at some point. But for many, many years, I just knew this wasn't the right time yet. One, I felt like I needed to evolve a little bit in my own story. I wasn't at a place yet where I felt I could, I really had a handle on things, and I didn't want to share advice or things with people yet, when I still felt like I didn't have, like, I don't want to say complete control, because we never have complete control, but I just wasn't there yet. And like you, I wasn't ready to really share everything either. And then at some point a couple of years ago on Lupus Chick, I realized I just need to put it all out there, because that's who I am in my everyday life. Like, there's very little filter. If someone asks me a question, I let them know exactly how it is. But online, I felt like I was always censoring myself, because I didn't want to upset someone or be judged. And then I thought, you know what, this isn't the real me. So then I just started putting everything out there, and Lupus Chick grew like wildfire. And that was at the point when I realized, you know what, I'm ready now to tell my story 100% and not hold anything back. And so in between telling my story, we also have like tips and just advice for people. It's sort of like a memoir / self-help book. So it's, you know, a little bit of my story, but it's also about their story and where are they right now and how can they get to where they want to go despite whatever chronic illness they have.
Wow. And you didn't stop there. There's more coming, which was so exciting when I saw that. Lady Gaga, did she approach you or did the team approach you to put a, and Lady Gaga has her first book coming out. This is literally her first book. It was released. It's called Channeling Kindness, Hope, Kind, Love, Gaga.
Yes.
And you are not, you are one of the people she's chosen to have a slot in that book.
Correct.
Because she's talking to various people where, whether it be chronic illness issues or whether it be issues dealing with depression or dealing with bullying issues. You, I'm presuming she chose you based on your chronic illness issues, your health issues, to talk about that. And how did that come about? And how can anyone read this story you put in that book?
That was complete surprise. I had no idea this was happening. So Lady Gaga has her channel Kindness, which is her digital imprint of her Born This Way Foundation, run by her and her mother. And so she wrote this book, which is, I'd say about maybe 3 years ago, Maria Maggiardo wrote a story on Lupus Chick for their channel Kindness website. And it was just basically how you spread kindness to other people without expecting anything in return. So we talked about the Lupus Chick story, and you know, it was amazing. We shared it. It was an amazing opportunity. And then about a year ago, I received a letter that she was writing a book and she was picking her favorite stories. So it was going to be this collection of stories that are all about being resilient, supporting one another, loving people, being kind. And you know, her family does have a lupus underlying link there. So I think that was something also that, you know, touched her. So the book actually just came out. We're chapter 35, which I'm super excited about. And honestly, like, what better platform to get lupus out there? Because the majority of people, when there are surveys and studies, the majority of people still don't know what lupus is or how it affects somebody. So I think, you know, for someone like Lady Gaga to express that on her platform, like, I'm so thankful. Like, who could have ever thought, you know? That's why I always tell people, if you feel like you as one person can't do anything, you have to look at the people around you, and like people like you, just, you know, watch what one person can do. I always tell them it takes one match you could start a wildfire with it. So don't stop, because if I had ever questioned, I may have never started 12 years ago.
Yeah. And you started a great thing, because I wish so many people who are going through different chronic illness could do something similar, because what you've started, you've opened people's mindset, you've opened people's mind to the way we look and think about illnesses. You've given it, yeah, I'm going through this, but these are ways of challenging those difficult times. Like, you know, when I read, if you go back to your blogs, for example, there's this one I read, like house plants improving health. It's like, you know, things you would never think about, you put that out there for people to question what they're going through. And you never stop giving yourself and using yourself as example. So someone out there who's feeling in a negative day. But one thing I really want to ask you, Marisa, is that when you have a bad day, because you know with chronic illness, we all do, how do you deal with that? How do you say, okay, it's a bad day, my illness is taking the best of me because I'm suffering so much? How do you channel that from a bad day to a joyful day?
So I definitely have bad days on a regular basis. You know, my disease is not well controlled. So for me, I've learned at this point, I need to sort of shut off when I'm having one of those days. I will sort of stop whatever I had, unless I absolutely like have to do something. I will usually shift things and move them to the right and, worry about them another day. I have a supportive, system around me where I let people know, like, I'm sort of at my limit today. I'm not going to be able to do A, B, and C. It'd be great if you can help me with, and I'm very specific now. That's something I've realized, in caregiving and being around like your family unit, not just I need help, but I'm exhausted. I probably will not be able to even take a shower today. If you could heat me up a bowl of soup, like being very specific. And then nutritionally, I really try to take care of myself on the bad days. I'll juice. I always have extra bone broth. I try to feed myself really well. Always have a treat, something that I love. I try to sleep as much as possible. I love music therapy. That's something for me that really helps to sort of get help with the physical pain and just bring me to another place. I'd say prayer and meditation are really high up on my list too. And I always tell people to keep an account of your wins, no matter where you have to write that down, because in those difficult moments, and I can get to a really dark place sometimes, I do not remember all of the wins that I've had in life. They don't come so easily in those moments. But if I have them written down, because I love journaling, I can go back and look and be like, wow, I remember that day. I remember how far I've come. So I have no doubt that I'm going to get through today.
Right. Marisa, our final question. So many people still don't know about lupus around the world. I know you've done an incredibly job. I know you really are spreading this word around. What's your hope for the future for people with lupus, especially people who are just in your answer, please think about people who have just been diagnosed today. There are people watching this video just been diagnosed. They've gone to the hospital because they've noticed rashes on their faces or they've noticed something different. And what are the things people who have, what are your hope for them? And what are the things that someone who thinks they might have it should look out for, in your opinion?
So I'd say for people that are newly diagnosed, I want them to know you're not on your own in this journey. There are millions of us around the world, and social media can connect you immediately to so many of us. And, I would just say be an advocate for yourself, educate yourself as much as possible about the disease. You are going to have to advocate for yourself in the healthcare system, because even some medical professionals aren't well versed in lupus. It's just not their area. So you really need to know. Journal, keep an account of your body, of what you feel like every day, so that you know when something is off and you get to know your triggers, you get to know your symptoms a little bit better. Learn how to say no. That was one of my biggest issues. Yeah. I feel like people with chronic illness, sometimes we can overcompensate because we don't want to seem different from the people around us. We don't want to seem like we're limited. So we often put a lot on our plate. Don't do that to yourself. Learn from my mistakes, and be kind to yourself, not just be kind to others, but sometimes we're so kind to the people around us and we're really hard on ourselves. Yeah. Again, your body's already going through so much. It's fighting so hard. Stress is a huge trigger for lupus. So just be kind to yourself. Don't put extra stress and anxiety on yourself. For people that are wondering if they have lupus, usually you see your primary, but if you're able to get a second opinion, specifically from a rheumatologist, if you have things like fatigue, hair loss, rashes, sun sensitivity when you come out of the sun, sores in your mouth or your nose, trouble breathing, there's so many different things. And of course they overlap with so many other diseases. Mm-hmm. So you definitely want to go in and get some blood work, and bring up lupus. Just say these could also be, again, advocate for yourself. These could also be the symptoms of lupus. Can you test me for some autoimmune diseases? Sometimes you have to push. The average diagnosis for lupus is 5 to 6 years. So it can't hurt going in from the get-go and asking for the tests that you want.
Wow. That is something I think many people wish they knew ages ago. Many people still don't know all of this information. I'm so glad you took the time out to share this information with us. So your book, when it comes out, how do we get that? How do we all get copies of your book?
So it's called Chronically Fabulous. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles right now. You can pre-order it. It's also on lupuschick.com. You can pre-order it right at the top. And it will be out in May of 2021, which is Lupus Awareness Month around the world.
And quick question, why Chronicle Fabulous? Why did you choose that name?
So it's actually a popular hashtag on Instagram for the chronic illness community. That, yeah, we have chronic illness, but we're also pretty fabulous. So we sort of just mixed it together. And it was actually originally supposed to be called Nourish, because it's really all about nourishing your body, your mind, and your soul.
Yeah.
But Chronically Fabulous worked also.
I like that because it's really captivated, and it says, yes, we have a chronic illness, but guess what? We are fabulous at the same time, so deal with it. And I love that. I love that about the book, and I can't wait when it's out to really grab a copy and hopefully have another interview with yourself to talk more about the book. And World Lupus Day probably next year.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I would love that.
Yeah, I would love to have another chat with you because this has been amazing. It's been an eye-opener for myself. And I'm sure it'll be such an eye-opener for not just myself. There's so many other people suffering from lupus and other chronic illness because a lot of things you said are so similar to people going through different chronic illnesses. It's about knowing your body and knowing when to stop. And you just done that in a very nice way that makes anyone feel comfortable that even if I'm going through this difficult time in my life, I could still find joy at the end of the day. Thank you so much, Marisa. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.